Mr. Smith, how are we doing?
Think we're doing fine. We're logging on YouTube as we speak.
Okay.
There he is.
Mr. Smith, how are we doing? Well,
I guess we're doing okay.
well, a time delay there. I promised to not use any potty language, so we don't need the time delay there. The hour being 7:01 p.m. on August 9th, 2021, I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting. Before starting, I would like to salute the flag, and I'd ask Councilor Lippman to lead us in salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Counselor. We're joined this evening by our recording secretary, City Clerk Cheryl Hebert, and I'd ask recording secretary to please call the roll.
Here.
Counselor Cheney. Counselor Susie.
Here.
Counselor Lippman.
Here.
Counselor Haynes.
Here.
Counselor Hamel.
Present.
Counselor Felch.
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here. Thank you. Welcome. We are also joined by the aforementioned City Clerk Cheryl Hebert, as well as City Manager Scott Myers. IT tonight, Finance Manager, Finance Director is Glenn Smith. Item 7 on our agenda, which is acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. Regular meeting minutes of July 26, 2021. Minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Tuesday, July 27, 2021, with no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk. The minutes will be accepted as distributed. Under item number 8 on our agenda, 8A, is discussion of the state school property on Route 106 and Meredith Center Road. I can see in the audience tonight, we're joined by Executive Counselor Joe Kenny, who's joined us, as well as Chairman of the Lakeshore Redevelopment and Planning Commission, George Wald. I know it was a request of a couple of the counselors from one of our previous meetings in light of what's occurred recently in regards to Lakeshore or the Laconia State School property, that both of you perhaps attend, and it's really great that you have. I'm wondering if maybe you can just step forward and maybe we can just have a general conversation. Come on up, Joe. Yeah, if you like. There's only one microphone, but I'm sure you can share. Anyway, thank you to both of you for making time in your schedule to join us here at the City Council meeting. As you know, and of course, as you know, Commissioner Bald, I know you've been working on this project for quite some time, at least since about 2017, and certainly Executive Councilor Kenny is something that may end up on your agenda at some point, depending on how things go. We as a council here, as I'm sure you're aware, have been very concerned about the future of that property. Certainly 217 acres of really prime real estate, if you will, but it's also a piece of real estate that I think is tied up in the heart and soul of this community as well. It's a transformative piece of property and something that it's not the sole reason we're concerned about it, but it has, one of our concerns is certainly as it's transferred to private ownership, it will go on to the tax rolls of the city, which I think we're looking very favorably towards. But also, I think more importantly, it's really the future of the city when it comes to things like housing. That is strategic development in certain aspects of the city. This certainly represents the future of this community. It's very important to us. And it's something that has had a storied history, that's for sure, that property. And we're very interested in its future and what becomes of it. And I want to say, Commissioner Wald, you and your commission, and I see Commissioner Spanos sitting here as well, have been working so collaboratively with the city, and we greatly appreciate that very much. You've kept me notified as well as the other counselors, I believe, as to when the meetings were taking place. I've been able to join a handful of the meetings. I know Counselor Cheney has been had an excellent attendance record at the meetings. And I think we all appreciate the spirit in which you've handled this commission. You've enhanced the value of the property from my perspective and the work that you've done. Mind you, it's all volunteer work as well, which is extraordinary in and of itself. And therefore, maybe a brief update as to where you are right now as far as the commission's concerned, and if you would.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I should tell you, I was elected to Somerset City Council when I was 25 and elected mayor when I was 27, and it was a strong mayor form of government. We went to city manager after. So I have a real soft spot in my heart for municipalities and the things that you have to work with and do. It's a complex business, and I admire your work. And so when Senator Morris asked me if I would be willing to serve on this commission, I was delighted to do it. Again, I found it as a way to be able to help the community. And there are a number of things we have done, and Mayor, I appreciate you pointing them out. We started with a strategic plan, and then we worked into a master plan. We also did an environmental study, phase 2 environmental, and very important, nobody would buy a piece of land without having that environmental. And there are so many rumors about the property and what's there and what might be in the ground. The great news is people did take good care. There was a couple areas that they did find some chemicals that needed to be removed. They have been removed. So we can pretty much assure that at least where they did all the testing, that you've got a nice clean site, and that certainly means a lot. We did a wetland delineation plan. So all of the wetland on that property is very, very detailed, all the information on there. And some areas we thought we'll be able to develop, we will not because of that wetland. And so the master plan just moved some of the property over a little bit. We've been working very closely with historic preservation. Obviously, they have concerns about some of those buildings. We also just recently hired a firm to do a land survey of the property. The property had not been surveyed in quite a while, and so it was important to have that accurate information. We've been trying to get a firm to do an appraisal, but that's very difficult. Everybody is so busy. We've gone out to bid and not gotten any bids back. I want to thank the community as well for being such a great partner to the commission. Mayor Hosmer has been wonderful to deal with. Mayor Engler was excellent. We spoke often. We've had numerous public hearings as well as public meetings. Councilor Cheney, I think, has a better attendance record than I do, so I'm embarrassed to say that, but he's always there, and it's been very helpful to us. The community has responded very well and given us good suggestions as we were going through the planning process. Now, obviously, our hope was that we could develop an authority that would take on the redevelopment of the property. And that didn't go through. And so now the state has considered or is in the process of putting it out to bid to hire a broker who in turn would try to sell the property outright. The legislation creating the commission has not been repealed. So we're continuing to do our work. We feel it's important to continue and do the things that we were supposed to do. So we're going to be meeting again in September, because that's when we'll get the results of the land survey and any issues that may come up as a result of that. In the process of putting this together, because of my experience meeting with a lot of development people over the past many years, I reached out to a number of people and said, you know, this is the process that we're going through, and hopefully we'll be at a point where we'll be looking for private sector to develop either a portion of it or part or all of it. And so there are a number of people that we've been talking to over the period of time. If the state continues, finds somebody, a broker to do their job and goes out to look for people to do the development, we'll share that information. I'll basically call all the people that we've talked to and say, if you have an interest, we're not the ones to deal with anymore. It would be the broker, and because it's not the direction necessarily that we would want to go, but it is a direction, and we want the city to be successful. So we wouldn't do anything that would harm the efforts to get development there. Councilor Kenny and I have had numerous discussions about this, and I certainly appreciate his keen interest in the community and what happens on that site. So we're trying, and I guess I would say is we're going to continue to do what we have been doing until such time as there isn't a reason to do it. So if the state hires a broker and they find somebody to buy it and it's satisfactory to go that route, then I guess we'll be out of business. If that doesn't happen, then we'll just continue to do what we have been doing and hopefully find another route. But our hope again is that this creates the opportunity that the legislature set out. And I'm paraphrasing somewhat, but what they said is, come up with a plan that creates jobs, is numerous tax-paying entities, and is something that the community and the county can be proud of. And so that's kind of been our focus all the time, was how are we going to create jobs? How are we going to have something that pays taxes, and that's something that the community can be very proud of. I don't know if the counselor wanted to add anything. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have that I can answer. And I also, I guess, lastly, would also compliment the commission members who have really done a wonderful job. As the mayor pointed out, we're all volunteers on this, and they have just done a tremendous job. Counselor, I don't know if you wanted to.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here tonight, along with Chairman Bald. At the time when I first came to the council in 2014, the mayor at that time was Ed Engler, and kept talking about the state property. And of course, there's bunches of state property across my district. I said, which state property are you talking about? And of course, I was immediately directed. And then I said, oh, okay, you're talking about that state property. But with that, you know, we put together a resolution at the executive council and kind of created an ad hoc committee to really look at some of the outstanding issues with this property. And there were many at the time. And I think we were just trying to, at least from the legislative and executive standpoint, particularly the administrative services, to get our handle on some of the issues, which that the Lakeshore Redevelopment Commission has been working on for the last several years. We're doing great work. From that, Senator Morse jumped in and said, we're going to create this commission, which is going to help out the city of Laconia. It's going to help out the state to better understand what it is that's there at the state property. And, you know, again, the commission's done a tremendous job. With that, all those appointments came before Governor Council. I had to confirm those individuals who were on this commission. And the names that I saw were people I knew, and I knew that were very conscientious, were great leaders in the community, and they were looking out for the best for the community. So I very comfortable with those confirmations and obviously selections. So from there, I was out of office for a couple of years. And so, but I kept informed and reading about what was going on, and obviously would read the website for the minutes and so forth. It's apparent that the governor wants to sell the property, and he wants to, hire a broker and kind of move forward. But with that, all that corporate knowledge that has been built up over the last several years should not be lost. So that's what I'm taking with me when I come to the table at the Governor Council, whatever that decision might be made in the future. I'm going to come back to the city of Laconia and say, what do you think? Is this the right thing to do? And I think I'm going to put a lot of scrutiny onto admin services. I'm going to check in with them and saying, okay, what is it that you're doing that need to be aware of? Because ultimately I have to make a decision based off the work that you're putting forward. And ultimately I have to convince or not convince, 3 other executive councilors whether they'll vote yes or no. There's an old saying that Councilor Burton said to a new governor. It's one thing you need to know, Mr. New Governor. What's that? He goes, well, you need to know how to count to 3. So in the council, you got to count to 3 for any action. So we'll be looking closely at a future decision with regards to the state property, and I obviously will look out for the best interests of the city of Laconia, and making sure we get it right, because we surely don't want to get it wrong because we've come so far this far.
Councilor Kenny and Chairman Bald, thank you very much. Councilor Kenny, I really appreciate your responsiveness to when I check in with you, and always being willing to pick up the phone or come visit the city and have a chat about things. It means an awful lot, because I think it has left at times many of us here in the city feeling like we're a lone voice out in the wilderness, wondering who's standing up for the city of Laconia when some of these important decisions are being made. And I look at the work, once again, that the commission has done over the past 4 years now, and think I'd hate to see that all for naught, and just have another entity, whether it's administrative services or whether it's just the intent of the governor to come in and essentially not take as seriously as he should the work of the commission and just sell it to a high bidder. I don't think that is good for the city. I don't think it's using the land for the highest and best use. And I just personally believe that the city of Laconia deserves something more from the state. It's not a political issue by any means. It's just that we have, again, that property has been used for state purposes for over 100 years. And I think as much as we would like to see it transferred to private hands sooner as opposed to later, this property has been in state hands for 100 years. It needs work before we can really get the maximum value if we were to put it out into the open market right now. So as much as we'd love to put the for sale sign out there tomorrow and sell it the next day, the fact is we need to have a lot of work to do, because no work was done on the property to enhance its value, to delineate wetlands, to be conscientious of some of the materials that were being used or in the buildings or put in the ground. So that does take a little bit of patience and a little bit of time. And thank you, Commissioner and Chairman Bald, for having that patience, because it's not the sexiest work going on. It is hard. It's a grind to get that done. So thank you for that. I will open it up to counselors here for questions of Councilor Kenny or Chairman Bald. Councilor Littman.
Thank you both for coming tonight. Councilor Kenny, could you just talk us through the what happens at Executive Council in terms of procedure, both for the broker and the ultimate sale, what the process would be?
Typically, when a piece of state property comes up for sale, through the land transfer process, it usually goes through administrative services. They'll put out a RFP, or from that standpoint, they'll look at the qualifications of the bidders, and then, arguably they'll pick the lowest bidder. That would then go to the Attorney General for review, and then it would come back to Governor and Council. Governor has to place it on the agenda, and then it would come before Governor and Council to vote it up or down. Anytime there's a transfer of state land, it has to go through governor and council. So the last council meeting, there had several land transfers. You might know of up in Berlin, there's a White Mountain Community College. They just went through that process of selling some land across the street from the college, and it went through that same process. So it's pretty straightforward as far as the process. So when does the council get involved? Usually we'll get the contracts on a Friday, and then on a Wednesday, hopefully those 3 or 4 days, we've studied what the contract is before us. I'm hoping that we'll have a little bit more lead time on this with regards to looking at this if it potentially becomes before the council, because I'm going to need to educate my fellow councilors who are not from this area, who don't know Laconia as well as I do, and you surely know it a lot better than I do. So I'm going to take your input and say, is this in the best interest of the city of Laconia? And how can I convince 2 other councilors to say it's the best thing for Laconia? And at the same flip side, if it's not in the interest of Laconia, then I need to go back to 2 other councilors or more and say this isn't good for Laconia. So that's generally the process as I see it.
So will the broker contract be the first thing that comes before you, or does that just get handled in DAS?
I think that's a part of the process. We just look at the final sale and transfer of the property.
Yeah, absolutely. Counselor Susie.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Okay, very much. Question that maybe it's on a lot of other people's minds, but I want to ask you, why is the governor and the legislature, for example, taking your work, which you work so hard, and I know Council Cheney and I have talked about it, and kind of push that aside? And, where's our, why was that done? That's been bothering me since day one, because I think that's such a big, important part of the city. And it almost feels like we have no voice. Nothing against the commission, okay? But it seems like that's all been taken away from the city. I'm just asking a question that's going to probably get me in trouble.
Unless we handle that.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing, doesn't he? I don't see that that our work has been wasted. I think, as the mayor said, and I certainly agree, I think we've enhanced the value of the property by a lot of this, because any person that would want to develop partial or the entire site will certainly value the information. And they would have to do it if it hadn't been done. And as I said, we're going to continue to do, it's another way of getting the property off the state's books. And the governor believes that that's, the better way. We had again tried to do an authority. So we'll just have to see where that is. But I and the commission members don't feel like they're throwing this out, that it's all good information. And anybody that would be interested in redeveloping that property can look at that master plan. And we would say to anybody, listen, if you want this to go smooth, then do something that's consistent with this, because we know the city is supportive of this because they've had a hand in creating it. If you are going to do something completely different, then how the city reacts is going to be kind of up in the air. So I think it still is something that we're going to, all that information is available. And I've talked to Commissioner Arlinghouse that encouraging people that have an interest to direct them to the website where we've put all that information that we've put together. And hopefully, again, it'll work out. I have that soft spot in my heart for communities, and I would love to see this, redeveloped. One of the things we did, and your city planner came with us, we went to a similar facility in Massachusetts, in Northampton, Massachusetts. And they did a combination of office use, senior citizen housing, subsidized housing, but not like a Section 8 housing, but a lower cost of entry, and regular market housing. And we could not tell the difference. I couldn't say to you, that building is subsidized, this building is market rent. It was just fabulous done. It was so well done, good landscaping. And we said, this is something we have to strive to do when this project goes forward. Because again, the three things that the legislature said is create something that creates jobs, pays taxes, and is something the community can be proud of. And that would be the type of development the city could be proud of. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course. Mr. Ball, all I want to say is, I applaud your efforts and what you've done specifically at Pease. I've had an office at Pease, okay? And I think it's awesome. And I was like to see the same kind of things with residential and industrial. And I look at that land out there and you see some of the highest points in the city and the value and everything else. And I just want to make sure it's managed and looked at also locally, okay? Not just like thrust upon us that we have to accept it one way or the other. And Councilor Kenny, I know you'll do everything you can to help us.
Well, one thing's for sure, to stay on the Olympics that just kind of coming to a closing, is we're gonna pass the baton. Because if we don't pass the baton the right way, we're not gonna win a gold medal.
Exactly.
So we need to do it right.
Thank you.
Councilor Cheney.
Mr. Mayor, neither of these gentlemen need my endorsement. But I've known George Ball for 25 or 30 years now, I guess.
Right.
And he is, for me, the epitome of what public service is all about. And I want to thank you personally. I know I've said a few words to you in the past, but I want to thank you personally for the efforts you've put in over these last several years. I've watched you run those meetings. You're a gentleman, but you get things done, and that's an art that's hard to acquire. Councilor Kenny, I couldn't be happier that you're there at this time. I've worked with you on other projects, much smaller things, but I have faith that you'll do everything in your power to see to it the city gets the best deal it can get out of it. So thank you both. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cheney. And Councilor Hamel.
Yes, I'd like to thank you both too also. And one of the things that kind of worries me is that I understand that, you know, with all the stuff you invested in and all that, hopefully the governor will take that under consideration of what you've already done in the past for the state school and all that. But that's what kind of worries me, where it's going to come down to the executive council voting on this. And as Councilor Kenny said, you know, there's some, I don't know, but maybe there's some don't even know what the state school is. I have no idea. But to put it into the hands of people, and hopefully you'll educate them of not knowing what this property is, how valuable it is, and all the good work that you've done, that it won't end up being a great thing. You know, if it goes out to a broker and they find a buyer, and that'll be the end of it. I hope the city will still be able to have something to say, and I hope your commission will have something to say, because in my mind, your commission is the right way to go on this whole project. It should be continued. You know, it bothers me that the rug has kind of been pulled out from under you in a way, and that, you know, it's going to go into a broker's hand, and whoever shows up with the biggest checkbook might have that opportunity. So, you know, as Councilor Kenny said, I'm hoping that if someone does come forward and is looking to buy the property, that we have a chance to say, geez, you really are not a good fit, or you are a good fit. I agree with you totally that, you know, as far as, you know, it should be a business type thing, a residential type thing, and you know, bring things to the community. As the mayor said, it's been over 100 years since the state has had control of that, where we've basically have nothing to say and have received nothing in taxes. And I think it's time that we're able to do that. And if it's sold through a brokerage, then basically our only opportunity is through the planning board and these zoning laws. That's all we would have to go with, I think. I could be wrong, but I don't like the way this has transpired and changed. To me, your commission and the great way you have run it and the members there, they're locals in the community around the city and Lakes region. And to me, they have a good feeling and good ideas of what that should look like. And I commend you for, all your work that you have done on that for so many years. And we really, really now need the representation in Concord to come to some conclusion that's going to be good for the city. I mean, to me, that's where it's at with the city. The Lakes region can all take a part of it, but to me, the city is going to have to come first on this. So, but thank you so much for your work and for being here tonight.
Well, thank you. One thing I wanted to mention, you probably all know this, but it comes up every now and then and has for the past 3 or 4 years. It does not include Ahern State Park or the property across 106, which is on Opeechee. 2 beautiful, beautiful pieces of land, but they're not part of the development. And from day one, we've said that's not part of this. But every now and then, people think that there's a connection between. We've had discussions with parks about their use there and the fact that if this property was developed, how best for them to incorporate having a lot of people live there and having a state park. So they are following this very, very closely. So.
Thanks. I don't want to belabor the point, but just an RFP did come out from Administrative Services this week looking for a broker to bid on the opportunity to market the property for sale. It looks like something they want the property sold as is and quickly. And one of the lines in the RFP that came out that I found particularly disconcerting was, I'll quote this, the department may direct the successful respondent to commence marketing the property to suitable qualified buyers as soon as possible before the end of 2021 summer season, with or without regard to the mission, findings, or recommendations of the Lakeshore Redevelopment Planning Commission established under RSA 10.5. That is just,
That's just, yeah.
I thought, anyway, I don't know. I had a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings about that, but I think we all are on the same page there. But that's really what we're up against right now. So your advocacy, your collaboration with the city is particularly important at this time. Any other questions or comments from councilors?
I just have a question. Maybe if you, Mr. Mayor, but you might know, or somebody else might. Who wrote that?
That came out of Administrative Services. I don't know who wrote it exactly, but the person that is signed off on that is there's a contact person, but I don't know if he's the one who wrote it or not.
It's probably a lawyer at the.
If you want something
AG's
screwed up,
office.
get a lawyer involved, right?
Exactly.
Thank you,
Say
Councilor
anything.
Chidi.
It's kind of like the young single male who says, I don't have to have consent from my mother and my father, that don't ask them for their opinion going forward.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, again, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here, and I wish you the best, certainly on this project, but everything you do for your citizens. As I said, I truly admire the work that you do. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Night, Joe. Good night. Moving on to item number 10 on our agenda, which is citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda. If anyone's here would like to speak up, now would be the appropriate time to items that we are not specifically addressing this evening. You could step right up and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Don Johnson, Representative. I wanted to make sure that everybody got the flyers and handouts I delivered earlier in the week. Yes. Just want to make sure everybody got them in their boxes and that they were available to you guys. I also want to thank you guys for having both the gentlemen that were just up here talking about the state school property. It's been kind of, I know I use the walking trails and everything up there, and I don't want to see them lost to the community. I've had a lot of constituents asking me that we can try to preserve those pieces of land so that our residents can still use them to walk their dogs and trailblaze. So I've been starting to get involved in trying to see if I can help on my end too. So thank you
very
all.
much. Anyone else looking to speak to items not on the agenda? Anyone online, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Mayor. Peter Burnett has his hand raised.
Welcome, Mr. Burnett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Very well. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, wonderful. So that I want to just say, as Chair of the Planning Board and the Master Plan Steering Committee, that I am appalled at the turn of events because Commissioner Bald and his committee worked very hard at coming up with a master plan. And as you all know, the city is required at least decennially to do a master plan, and we're in the midst of doing a rewrite or starting a rewrite now. The key word here is infrastructure. If the governor intends to sell this off as one parcel, then I think we need to have a seat at that table when the negotiations go down, because we need some infrastructure improvements up there that will benefit not just that parcel, but the whole neighborhood. We've had discussions about how to bring water up to the high points off Route 106 Parade Road in order to stimulate development. Maybe sending water up the Hilliard Road, which is a Class 6 road at this point. The state school is also situated in a location where the neighboring properties could well benefit from all the infrastructure improvements. And having read most, if not all, of what the commission's report says, it would appear that the site is in desperate need of water, sewer, and storm drainage, complete replacement, and whatever environmental abatement needs to be done. That should not be borne. The cost of that should not be borne by the city. If they're going to make a sweetheart deal with the developer, I don't think the planning board should be the only body of the city that could put conditions upon any potential developer, such as the improvements in city infrastructure in that area, which is absolutely vital for the development of that west quadrant of the city. So please keep that in mind. And I know Councilman Cheney and I and the other members of the Master Plan Steering Committee have talked at length about this. I'd hate to see all that hard work, as well as the hard work of the commission, go down the drain because the governor's impatient. That's bad government.
Thank you very
Okay,
much, Mr.
I'm
Burnett.
done. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you joining us this evening.
Good evening,
Good
gentlemen.
evening. Welcome.
I'm Gail Ober, Ward 5, and I am the Vice Chair of the Zoning Board, as well as a member of the Master Plan Steering Committee. I wanted to confirm from you, perhaps the City Administrator Myers, this is an area that is under an R code under performance zoning. Am I correct? Under performance zoning, the zoning board has no say. That was one of the caveats of performance zoning, is that it does fall solely on the planning board to develop the property. To reiterate what Planning Board Chair Burnett said, we have discussed a lot, and Councilor Cheney knows this because he attends our meetings at the Master Plan Steering Committee. Some of the infrastructure needs that we do have in the north end of the city, and how pivotal this piece of property is. While it lays under performance zoning, it is actually zoned rural. I believe it's zoned 2-acre residential for the most part. But I do want to emphasize that there is no zoning board input
Thank you very much.
for this piece of property, as long as performance zoning is the trigger used to develop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Anyone online, Mr. Smith? Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving along to item number 11 on our agenda, which is interviews. We have Michael Foote seeking reappointment to a regular member position on the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2024.
Greetings, how are you people doing this evening? Michael Foote, 222 Roller Coaster Road.
Good to see you. Welcome. So ordinarily, Mr. Foote, as you know, interviews of individuals applying for appointment or reappointment to various boards and commissions will be held at this evening's meeting. Appointments will be made at the council's August 23rd, 2021 meeting. So if you'd like to, you've already introduced yourself, let us know why you'd like to serve on the Conservation Committee.
I've been a part of conservation for probably 3 terms now. And I think in our community here, one of the projects that I was most proud of over the past bit was the requirement of public access onto Pickerel Pond. Now, there's a bit more to go there with the signage and some parking access, but that is something that we were able to bring to the community in allowing our visitors and our residents to have access on a nice secluded pond, fishing and recreation. Reason I think it's important for conservation to pay attention to this as we have development in our community, it's important to pay attention to our waters and our quality of our outdoors. And it's one of our attractors, and it's why it's important to be taken care of.
Thank you. I will tell you on a personal note, I love the green space all around your property. I always admire it when I come down Roller Coaster Road and look around, and I think it's just really very nice. So
Try to lead by example.
yeah, I can see that. Any questions on council for Mr. Foote from council members?
Just not a.
Go right ahead.
Not a, besides that, you also serve on the capital improvement.
I serve on CIP. I also serve on ZBA, and I'm a part of the master plan steering committee.
So I'd like to thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And why don't you, if there are no other questions, why don't you stay right there because you're up next in the agenda, which is good scheduling. So once again, we have Michael Foote seeking reappointment to a regular member position on the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2024. So welcome again. And why would you like to be reappointed?
Well, I
to the
think
ZBA?
ZBA here in Laconia, as we're moving into I see Laconia growing. There are challenges to it in that we have to look at our density, and that through the master plan steering committee and the master plan, we'll probably be considering different values of density within the community. So during this, it changes. Nothing's ever written in stone, certainly after discussion, throughout the community for how we would like to see the community develop for affordable residential areas. I think it's important to consider all that needs to be in the community for the future development. So it's not all big areas, some of it in the community where there is infrastructure. We could look as a city at some parcels which are there and available to create new neighborhoods even that are able to support teachers and students with access. Lakeport is one of my favorites. I really like seeing the stuff that's been happening there. And I think there's more potential also.
Terrific. Thanks. I think that's very well put. Any questions from council members for Mr. Foote? Seeing none, thank you again for your willingness to serve and the work you've been doing.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. That's 11A and 11B. Moving right along to item number 14, which is our public hearings portion. This is an issue that I know has been discussed recently, but it's a public hearing pertaining to the declaration of a portion of Rotary Park as surplus. If a declaration of surplus is made, the city council has several options available to them, to them, including licensing or leasing the requested land as opposed to a direct sale. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the July 28th, 2021 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun, posted at City Hall, Laconia Public Library, Community Center, and the SAU. All city expenses relating to the transfer of this property would be covered by the Belknap Mills Society. Action on this item may be taken up under unfinished business this evening. So I'd like to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:46 PM. And if someone would like to speak in regards to this, now would be the appropriate time. Step right up.
I just have a quick question.
Be
Oh,
bold.
Mr.
I'm not
Mayor.
going to call on you. Just step right up and take the
okay.
mic.
I just have a quick question. If the city declares this surplus, and I know that the Belknap Mill is interested apparently in doing something back there. I don't know exactly what the plan is. Before that can happen, does this have to go through a bidding process? Or if somebody else wants to lease that piece of property and or buy and or whatever for a price greater than what the Belknap Mill is willing or capable of paying? I just think that should be consideration. I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm just saying that we generally go to the best bid
Fair enough.
as city policy.
Any other comments on this public hearing that is still open? Anybody online, Mr. Smith? I'd like to declare the public hearing on this matter closed at 7:47 PM. Next up would be mayor's report. Right now, in light of the task ahead of us, we've got a fair amount of work to do. I'm going to forego the opportunity to speak tonight and move right along to item number 16, which is council comments. Looking to fellow councilors here. Councilor Felch, welcome.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring to attention that the 98th Annual Levitt Park Carnival is Saturday, August 21st from 3 to 6. Great time, great place to bring your kids, and hope to see a lot of people there.
Thank you, Councilor Felch. Thanks for your work with the carnival. Any other comments from council members? Councilor Cheney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wondered if we could hear at our next meeting, the status of the city's efforts with regards to the intersection, the property at the intersection of Roller Coaster and Parade Road. And secondly, at that intersection, I believe that's a state highway. Parade Road is a state highway at that point, but I was wondering if we could ask Wes or someone to see if the state would be willing to go in and cut back some of the brush on the side of the road, that's so that people pulling out, looking south can see something other than a vehicle that arrives at 18 nanoseconds before you get broadside. So, and anyways, if someone could just check with the state and see either if they would be willing to cut back or if they would allow the city to cut it back for safety purposes.
So are you looking for the foliage on the side of the private property?
Yeah, on the edge of the road. I mean,
The edge
it's
of the
within
road.
the right of way.
It's in the right of, okay.
Yeah, but there's so much growth now out there that you almost have to be halfway out of the intersection to see something coming north.
Yeah.
As there are a few others around town, but that was one that I noted. The other one that's similar is the Parade Road and the Pickerel Pond Road. It has the same, you come up into the intersection and when you try to look left, it's pretty heavy vegetation. And again, if we could ask if that could be worked on. my last comment is, I suspect many of you received, if not all of you, received a letter from the organization Kathy Ireland Recovery Center project. And it may be that I'm just not, I don't pay enough attention, but there was reference in there to capital I, capital O, capital P, comma, capital P, capital H, capital P, comma, capital M, capital A, capital T. I have no idea what any of those things are, and I was hoping somebody could check with the Kathy Ireland organization.
I think, and perhaps Counselor Littman can help us on this. It's up his alley, but I think medically assisted treatment, MAT,
Well, okay. That's
intensive
helpful.
outpatient.
Yep.
Treatment,
Yeah.
IOP.
It just would have
Yeah.
helped me if I'd had some idea of.
There's a vernacular that's used in a number of professions there that's, I can't keep up with them.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and none of them are in my profession.
Yeah, well,
Retiree.
I did receive a call from someone from that organization, and quite frankly, I didn't understand what they were talking about.
Okay, well, and I'm encouraged about the project. Assuming it does what it sounds like on the surface they want to do. But I'd like to know what some of those things now, thank you.
But maybe we can get a clarification. I'm happy to follow up with the organization and ask them for maybe something in writing that defines those terms.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
I think all of us have made the mistake of using the slang of our business, forgetting that other people don't understand a word of it. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Counselor Cheney. Any other council comments? Yes, Counselor Haynes.
Thank you. This morning I met with the city manager, and I would just like to, I congratulate him that some of the projects have been outsourced and they look great, and we're gaining.
Counselor Hamel.
I have to bring up the Colonial. We had our last weekend was the first full-born weekend of entertainment there, and they had 7 shows, one on Thursday and 2 each night after that. And I went on Friday night, and I never laughed so hard for a long time. Hour and a half of just laughing. So it was a great show. Everybody seemed to really enjoy the theater. I enjoyed the show. I didn't hear squat about parking. There might have been some, but I didn't hear anything that when you have 2 shows back to back and you got all those cars coming in, I didn't hear anybody say they couldn't find a place. So I think it all went very well, very well. Good christening of the theater.
Thanks to a lot of hard work on your part, Mayor English part, and a number of other people. I think there's a great buzz in the city because of that.
So
What's
too.
going
And
on
you
there.
could not get a restaurant reservation for the weekend.
Even you couldn't.
I could not. I tried.
Fair enough. Anyone else? Counselor Lippman, did you?
I think what Council Hamel just pointed out, the fact that the spinoff in terms of how it helped downtown businesses. That's
People
what we were
really need
looking
to
for.
take advantage of that, the nights they're open. Is, like I said, all the restaurants were booked solid.
Great. Any other comments? Thank you. Moving right along to committee reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening? How about liaison reports? Liaison reports. Going on, moving right along to item number 19. This is citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. Anybody's here would like to talk about an item that's on tonight's agenda? Now would be the appropriate time. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Sherry Bolduck, and I am the admissions representative for Empire Beauty Schools. Our students park in the parking garage. So although it's not the best case scenario, there's really no other parking. We have 8 faculty and staff and 45 to 55 students throughout the year at any given time. So I know you have a difficult job ahead of you, but I would like you to keep that in mind when making your decision. So.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us tonight and sit through 55 minutes of the meeting, and appreciate the work that you're all doing downtown, and certainly we'll take that into consideration. We certainly know we need the parking, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And our students do pay a lot of money to go to school there. And so they don't, if you start charging to pay for the cost, they won't be able to park there, most of them. So, and there's not much other parking options for them for that amount of population that we have. So,
They're quite often lugging things with them, aren't they? It's not like they show up empty handed.
oh yeah, a big suitcase that is not a carry-on. It's
Right.
a, check bag. All right, thank you. And thank you for your selfless service.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments for items on tonight's agenda? Okay, so moving right along to item number 20, which would be the city manager's report. I'll turn it over to Scott Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So included in your packet for the first meeting of the month, we have your financial and operational trends. Most of these items, we've just rolled over the fiscal year, so we're looking at a first month out of 12 in a number of cases. So really too early to see a lot of trends. One exception is the building permit report ties into the assessing year, which begins April 1st to tie in with state law. And we're currently just a little bit under $20 million in new net building permit value for the assessing year. As you know, last year, we ended up, I think, with 37, 38, $39 million. The exact number escapes me, but high 30s. And thank you. And you can see the 1 year ago benchmark was at 11.3 million. So to be close to 20 million at this point, things are still continuing to be strong. And once again, I'll just point out, this wasn't one of the big projects coming in with a $2 or $3 or $4 million building permit. There were a lot of renovations, additions, conversions of decks into 3-season rooms, knocking down some smaller cottages and the cottage colonies and rebuilding with newer ones, those types of things. But, we continue to be strong in the building permit area. So that's very positive. And as I mentioned, I think a meeting or two ago, not all of our building inspections show up in value. There's a lot of things that are out there with electrical permits and people doing roofing and siding and windows, which they need a building permit for, but don't necessarily add new value to the tax base, so to speak, in terms of somebody doing a siding project. We don't say, oh, great, we're going to gain, $15,000 in value out of that. But our land use departments are very busy with those inspections, and especially on the electrical side. A lot of people, again, doing conversions, adding more power, finishing over a basement, those types of things where they're really upgrading. So continue to be good. Again, I'll follow the mayor's lead. Most of these are just first month out of the year, so nothing out of the ordinary yet. Motor vehicles are basically on par with last year, and last year we exceeded our revenue estimate of 3.15 million by a handy amount. Going on to page 4, on the one pending grievance that we have, we did have the arbitration hearing on that last week. Briefs are due to be submitted, I believe, by somewhere around the end of August, 1st of September. So then the arbitrator will have all the information that he has at that point. I don't know the exact timeline and when we'll expect to hear a decision on that, but the submittal end will be done basically right around the 1st of September. A couple of these items don't have balances in them, just to the timing of this being an early meeting of the month and things wrapping up in the fiscal year in a bunch. So we'll update a few of the numbers for you where there's some gaps at the next meeting as well. So I will stop there and see if there's any questions on this or anything else that anybody has this evening.
Seeing none. We've all had an opportunity to take a look at the financial and operational trends. If there are no questions, we'll move right along then.
First month, it's hard to come up with a lot of analysis.
One number that keeps standing out, the number of motor vehicle stops.
Hopefully you're not one of them.
I'm not, but I can't speak for Mrs. Hosmer. Anyway, we'll move right along. Item number 21A, I think we're at here. which is the first reading of Resolution 2021-16 relative to authorizing an application for a $400,000 loan from the New Hampshire Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund for the Elm Street Sewer Project and appropriating funds for same, and to schedule a public hearing on August the 23rd, 2021. Scott, would you give us a brief on this, please?
Yeah, so this is, we're requesting some additional money. So our engineer estimate on this project came in around $2 million. And when we opened the bids, it was approximately $600,000 higher than that. So with some different contingencies we're looking at, we need to increase our appropriation by $400,000. This is driven probably to two major things that should surprise nobody. One is cost of materials. And number two is cost of labor. I mean, you talk to any of the contractors out there right now, whether they're paving or whether they're laying pipe or whatever it might be, and everybody is screaming for help in order to get it. They're paying for it. So this is something that, anecdotally we're seeing definitely across the state, and I've got to assume across the whole New England region. But that is our request, and this will extend this through the state Clean Water Revolving Loan Program.
So the question I have is, the original project was estimated at the total dollar amount was what? 1.7?
The original estimate, 1.7 for this component. Yeah. I mean, there's also design work in oversight and some contingency built in. So yeah, right around 1.7. And again, that probably was done how many months ago, Wes? Over a year ago. So in order to get in the queue for this project, and then to get in the queue for the state loan fund, this was aged a year, and everything that's being opened right now, again, anecdotally, we're seeing across the state is just the numbers are being blown out of the water.
That's, wow, okay. That's over a 30% increase then, right, on the total project cost on that. Okay. Any questions anybody, from the council to city manager?
I think we've competitively bid it. That's,
yeah.
I mean, the positive thing is interest rates are at a great point right now for borrowing. And that's the one saving grace on everything we've done. Sure. Basically, the last 3, 4, or 5 years, we've hit some phenomenal interest rates. No one likes paying more, but
gotcha.
We've
Please go right ahead.
So we've been contemplating 20 years on this project.
it's a 20-year bond with this with a loan program. Yeah,
Can we extend the maturity to balance it up?
we can take a look at it. I don't want to make a promise, but we can look, see if we have any options with that.
So going out to 25 or 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the life supports it.
I think typically with both water and sewer projects, yes, they've got the life expectancy there that could, so we can take a look to see if there's an option on that for you.
60 years when we looked at the water project.
Yeah. I mean, it's unlike other borrowing, it's people who aren't yet participating have the opportunity to participate. So it isn't all on current citizens.
All right, so we have a series of 3 motions here. The first one is a motion to move to waive a reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Second motion is to move a first reading of resolution 2021-16, a resolution authorizing application for a $400,000 loan from the New Hampshire Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund for the Elm Street Sewer Project and appropriating funds for same. So made by Counselor Felch, is seconded by Counselor Cheney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. And finally, I'll be looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on August 23rd, 2021, during the regular city council meeting to gather input prior to any action being taken. So made by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by raising your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Moving on to item number 21B. And this is city council options for Plantation and Colonial Roads. Scott, I can turn this over to you for a brief on this, or go in any direction you like here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Colonial and Plantation are Colonial is a road off of Route 11B heading towards Guilford, and Plantation off of that as well. And this is part of our ongoing discussion for many years ago and review of public streets and private streets. And these we have been maintaining, but this is one of those where the information and the research clearly shows that we've identified and who owns these roads as part of the subdivision there, and the ownership is consistent with some of the remaining lots that are undeveloped at this point. So we do know ownership. We had a meeting with residents that we advertised and had a pretty good turnout of about 30-ish people, more than that, 40 people at the Weirs Community Center a couple of years ago. Talked that this was probably going to be a direction the city was going to be going at some point to discontinue. There is a homeowners association that's not unique just to these roads. There's some overlap with some folks who have some beach rights with other neighborhoods in there. So the idea of a homeowners association, while not identical to these particular property owners, is not foreign to them. This road, every time we get a heavy downpour, a good chunk of it heads down the hill and comes up on Route 11B, and we reclaim that material and move it back up. There's some significant rutting that happens there. There is no infrastructure of any kind. It's a gravel road. There is no drainage system up there other than just the gullies and whatever may be off of the side of the road, or whatever Mother Nature is creating. This is mostly because we know who owns the roads and remain with the remainder of the lots. This is not a candidate to do an emergency lane necessarily, or to do an accept as is, which we've done some emergency lanes, and we've started the process specifically with the Methodist campground, and have had some good initial success there with moving those forward as accepting as is. This is one that for all intents and purposes, the city should not be maintaining after a certain date. If the property owners choose to get organized and do some kind of a betterment assessment to handle drainage and to put in a quality road base to keep the washouts from occurring, that would be on them. We certainly can work with them and assist them. No one is looking to say we would immediately stop service on these roads. But our feeling is that a reasonable time frame of notice should be given, and then the maintenance of the roads would fall upon the property owners there, or the owner of the road, however they wish to coordinate it. And Wes can get into some of the specific details if you have specific questions for that.
I don't have any specific questions, though the councilors may. Certainly, this is a ward that I represented for a period of time, became familiar with the Plantation Road and Colonial Roads, and I know Councilor Felch now represents that area. I did notice after our last deluge, I forget what day it was, there was significant runoff out onto 11B, which has been kind of the norm with this, with heavy rainfall. And quite frankly, I don't know if the grade on that hill would even allow for some of our fire engines to get up there to, in the case of an emergency. I'm not sure, but certainly I think the city is in a little bit of a, I think the homeowners up there are probably in a greater predicament than the city right now, but I think we've been trying to do this in a very responsible way and making sure they were notified. And so I'm glad we're moving to this, as we've sort of put it off long enough, and I think we have to deal with it at some point. So Councilor Felch, I didn't know if you had something you wanted to add there or
No,
not.
I agree. The last one on that Thursday when I poured, there was a lot of dirt on the main road. And then after it was cleaned up, you could see the pile on the side of the road. So it's an ongoing problem. Like city manager said that the owner actually owns property there. I would definitely like to see no more development there until the problem is taken care of. But it's definitely something that has to be looked into.
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone have any questions for the city manager? Yes, Councilor Hamel.
Is there a current owner of that road?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So he's still around.
But the city has been maintaining, as we said in your background, the city had been maintaining it. We think since the mid-70s, when the council gave direction to plow private streets that have year-round residents living on them. So we have not provided any service on the Heritage Road, which is the other private road in that development. But that was a directive of the way the council chose to handle that 40-something years ago of, just go plow everything where someone's living in the winter. we know that state law does not allow for public funds to be expended on privately owned roads. Again, that's why we've gone to a few of them, which were the emergency lane declarations and then the except as is. That was more into where the ownership was just not identifiable and either wasn't properly recorded or properly accepted by the city at a certain date, or was just back when things just got built and land use regulations weren't in place, so to speak. But this one, again, we can identify. And I believe at that meeting, if I recall correctly, Wes, that the attorney who was at least representing them at the time sat in, and I believe at least one of the owners was there as well. We did not choose to publicly identify who the owner was at that meeting, but a few of the residents came up afterwards, and we said, it's pretty easy research to determine who the owner is on this. And part of the reason is we haven't done this for the past year and a half or so is because we think this is probably going to draw some people out in a crowd. And through COVID, we certainly were meeting remotely, and just the challenge of something that we didn't need to bring to you a year ago. At least now we're back in public meeting sessions. And if we draw a crowd for something, I think we're in a little better place than we were in the past.
Was he the developer, Scott, of that whole project, or just the road? Or
I don't think he was the original owner of the project, right? I mean, that's gone through 2 or 3 owners.
One developer, a second developer, and then a private owner.
Okay, so this is a third ownership type of thing, but there's a paper trail there. This is a lot different than, say, the Methodist campground where it was a logging company and whatever that, all of a sudden, disbanded back in the 19 whatevers, and you lose all that. This is someone who we can identify and see the paper trail through the deed transfers.
Yeah, and I can say I spoke to one of the owners on Heritage Road, which is right off that shortly after you go up. He's aware, he has no problem with Heritage Road, but he is concerned about the other roads because that's his access.
Yeah, Counselor Susan.
Now, is this, we're going to give notice to those people that as of June 1st, 2024, we're not going to do anything there anymore? Is that what this means?
That's the date we're proposing, and certainly we'd like to memorialize that at some point, but we figure that would give them, several years that we would continue to do that. It will allow them to help get organized and see if they wanted to go betterment or form a homeowners association or come to some determination with the property owner of how this is going to be handled. There are some lots. We had one that went up there for a tax deed sale that we've been getting, had a bunch of inquiries about, and we'd let people clearly know that we thought this was a road that the city was not going to be maintaining going forward. We've had, you will be having one come to you, and this shouldn't impact it because the owner is aware, but on your next agenda, there'll be one from a property owner up there who has 2 lots that were what we refer to as involuntarily merged somewhere back in the day, where a lot of cities and towns took small little potato patch lots that were similar ownership and just blended them together for ease of tax maps. And those property owners, I believe the most recent extension from the legislature is by the end of this calendar year, can come back. And as long as they have not built, when I say take advantage, I don't mean take advantage in a shady way, but if you put 2 small lots together and all of a sudden now you could build and you took advantage of those lots being one lot for setback or where your property lines were and those types of things. If you haven't taken advantage of the combined lot and any development has happened. So in other words, the lots are basically in their original state. They can request and the city council can grant that we revert these lots back to their original status. So some of the challenges would be up there that some people are doing that, which they have the right to do, but a lot of small lots may not be able to support septic and water necessarily up there, which would be private on having each lot be a buildable lot. But we do have a request coming next agenda, and there's no reason that you shouldn't give it every consideration. The property owner could always choose to merge the lots at a later date type of stuff. So.
Counselor Susie, go right ahead.
One more question. It's related to this and maybe not, but I like this council to take, maybe it's a place for the council or we do not, but have a discussion concerning when developments are done, that we either ordinance or so through the planning board or through our own ability, unless the road's going to be city acceptable, we don't allow the development.
That's what's happening now.
Right, but I mean, I just want to make,
This
is there something that,
years ago.
Yeah, these are old ones. That happens now.
I know these are old ones,
Yeah.
okay? I'm talking about right now. I see another developments being built in the city proper or within the city limits. And if the roads are private roads, I don't think we should allow it. We should have city acceptable roads. That's where I'm coming from.
Fair enough.
I know
So-
that ends up with West having need more equipment and we need this and that, but that's what you call, today I was asking the city manager earlier, impact fees.
Ah.
Yes. Right, that's when we cover do impact fees, okay, so those need to, I know it's not, thank you, Bruce.
So we're looking for, I'm right now looking for a proposed motion to schedule a public hearing on the plan for Plantation and Colonial Roads and on declaring the two roads emergency lanes.
For that temporary process through the date of June 2024.
2024, June 1st, 2024. Yes. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Number 21C, which is a request by the WOW Board. WOW Board has requested the use of the Opeachy Park track, parking lot, and WOW Trail Friday, October 15th from 4 to 6 p.m. for setup, and Saturday, October 16th, 2021 from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the 6th annual Pumpkin 5/10K fundraiser event. WOW Trail is the benefactor of the event. City Council approval is being requested because the event is anticipating revenues in excess of $2,000. So be looking for a motion to approve this request from the WOW Board. So made by Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none.
I guess I'd just say
Jump
for
the
for the
gun.
public's interest, they're raising money so that they can support the WOW Trail, which is a city benefit. So
It's great. Thank you.
And
Any
we'll
other
see
questions?
everybody out there walking, right?
Yes,
Okay.
if not,
I will be there.
I've
There
done
goes
it.
Tony.
I've done it every year they've had it.
Okay, all right, good. Anyway, we've got the motion on the table and a first and a second. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving right along here to application for tax relief under RSA 79E for the property at 781 Union Avenue. Scott, I will allow you to sort of lead us through this just a little bit here. Is there anyone here representing the applicant? Is there not?
No, I think procedurally tonight is just to move this one and the next item, which also deals with RSA 79E to a public hearing in 2 weeks. So this is more of a formality tonight. I can speak very briefly to what
Very briefly.
79E is, if you like. So 79E is enabling legislation under state law that a municipality can choose to adopt and utilize it as an economic development tool. The city adopted it back in 2012. What it basically is, if there's determined to be a public benefit, first and more foremost, in a city village center or downtown or area like that, and there's a significant investment of a rehab of a building, and in some cases, there's more credit given if it's a historically significant building. And again, being a public benefit, are you putting a market, or a supermarket in a place that people in a high density area can walk to who don't necessarily have vehicles? Are you rehabbing an old historic structure? Are you creating workforce housing, which helps, be able to supply those entry level things? So you as a body determine what the public benefit is after there's input, if any, during a public hearing. If you grant it, there's some various parameters which we can get into under state law for how many years you can grant tax relief. And basically, simplest way to put it is, if someone's making an investment, what do we do in New Hampshire? Well, as soon as the investments does, we raise their assessment to reflect what's there, and we give them a bigger property tax bill and say thank you. This allows basically you to freeze their assessment at a current level for a period of whatever number of years may make sense. And there's some limits under state law as to how far you can go. And at the end of the time, then their assessment goes up to whatever the market's driven in. And it's not a deferral. They're not paying back taxes over that period of time, but it's meant as an incentive tool for development. So this is the next one. All we're asking tonight is that they be referred to a public hearing in 2 weeks.
Any questions?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? So made by Councilor Cheney. Is there moving this to a public hearing on August 23rd, 2021 to gather additional public input prior to any action being taken? So the motion, have a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion that's on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor of moving this to public hearing, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Moving on to item number 21F, which is application for tax relief under RSA 79E for the property at 50 Church Street. Right now,
Mr. Mayor, that was 21E.
come on. I think that was that 21D.
D was the previous one.
Right, so now I'm on 21E.
Right.
What did I say?
You said F, I think.
Oh, thank you. So, similar issue, different property, 50 Church Street. I'd like to move this to a public hearing during the regular city council meeting on August 23rd, 2021, to gather public input prior to any action being taken. Is there a motion for that? So made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Cheney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes unanimously. Item 21F, which is temporary traffic order, 2021-10 for the Timberman, a request for a temporary traffic order for the Timberman race on August 22nd, 2021. The event was approved at the Special Events Committee on June 30th, 2021. Rob Moore has submitted this for approval, and right now we'd be looking for a motion to move, to approve temporary traffic order 2021-10 Timberman to be held August 22nd as presented. The motion to move this, go right ahead. Are you going to make the motion?
I'll make the motion. I have a question.
Absolutely, yes. So motion made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Susie.
Yeah, this is to Scott, does this fall in line with the original application and what we expected?
It does, and I will say this is probably going to be a little fluid here. It's our first time hosting it, and as we work through nuances and issues and even day of event type of things, we may say, oh,
Yeah, okay.
we need to do this. But yes, so basically the race, the swim part of the race starts at O-Pee-Chee. So everyone's gathered at O-Pee-Chee in the morning. They swim, they come out also at O-Pee-Chee, same place they start. That's when they go to transition from swim to bike. The bike route is laid out. It goes all the way down to the speedway in Loudon. I think they do a lap around the track. They come back up. They enter back into Laconia. They go back to O-Pee-Chee and they do the run portion, which is a half marathon. And it basically encompasses North Main, maybe Old North Main, Elm Street, the Wow Trail from Lakeport, looping around back. Maybe I gave the reverse direction. They do a second one and then it veers off. And I believe it goes down Lexington to Shore, runs along Shore to come back in Gale Ave into the downtown, comes Beacon West, and the finish line is on Main Street.
It's all in one day, Scott?
I'm going to do it over 4 days in my car, I think, but so that's why I say there's a lot of moving parts. We may find out that we need to tweak something, so don't take this first year one to the letter of the order, but we think it's close.
I spoke to someone today from the organization, okay, and they've got 1,800 people registered already to participate. Okay, and not counting.
And they haven't received your 6 applications.
No, they haven't. And
have to wait a while.
I was just thinking about all the people that'll be here for that. I mean, it does the participants, think about families, friends, all that kind of, this is awesome. And I just think it's great. I want to thank the Ironman organization and, you know, the lady that was here and
Audra Indek.
yeah, Mrs. Indek and stuff like that, because I just think it's awesome. And I thank you.
Of course. Counselor Littman.
I know, Bob, you just talked about all the people that are going to come and their families. Actually, some of them have been already coming up and checking out the course and spending time here. So it's not just this weekend that we benefit.
It's what we anticipated, right? I mean, that's when Audra Indek made the presentation to us, the idea of people coming up to our community to start checking out the course and training and maybe staying for a couple of days and then having a big weekend. So this is a very fluid situation. I think there may be a couple of kinks here as we roll along, but I have no doubt that it's going to be a lot of fun to have it here. And I'm very pleased that they're here. Yes, Counselor Hammond.
I got a question for number 7. Now it's saying that there'll be no parking on Beacon East. So Scott, is that going to be open for travel? Because if it's not, we're closing off all of the inside loop. And the only way around would be Beacon East, Beacon West. And number 7 was saying no parking on that whole stretch.
So we're doing the no parking because we want to keep a traveled lane open for vehicles because that, so that's what the bicycles, when they come back up, are coming up and not coming through Main Street. They're coming Beacon East. So that's the transition as they're getting back to Opeachy for that. So by not having parking doesn't then force the bicyclists into the vehicle travel lane. It gives them an area where they can ride and cars can coexist. Certainly we'll have that intersection down by the post office staffed so that, you know, we're stopping cars so that bicycles have the right of way to go church and then get on to North Main Street at that point. So that's why I say this will be fluid. I want to give a lot of credit to staff because this really encompasses just about every department in the city, from public works, parks, planning, police, fire. And then we're taking the lead in coordinating with neighboring communities on the route down to Concord, even though they're to Loudon, I should say, even though they're coordinating and contributing their own police or EMS along the routes in some cases. You know, Command Central is through Laconia taking the lead and communicating with the various departments along the way. So a lot of effort, as the mayor said. We're sure to have some kinks on this the first year. We may change a couple of things here administratively just because we go, okay, this we missed, or this isn't going to work the way we thought, or that type of stuff. So bear with us, but I agree. It's a great event. And I think it's everything that we hope for with drawing people to Laconia for one more reason to come here.
Will the Beacon East, will the lane for cars and the lane for bikes kind of be separated, or is it open field?
Well, you think about it right now, we've got the parking spaces. So vehicles are only in one lane right now. So we're probably going to be targeting the cyclists to be coming up and riding over the parking spaces would be my guess. And that way the vehicles already have their lane delineated. And as we get down closer to the traffic light at the intersection of Church Street with the post office, that's where we'll have it staffed so that as we have bicyclists coming through, you know, the vehicles are yielding to the cyclists because it's a timed event and it's a race and the cyclists don't want to stop.
And you're gonna have to have the parking spaces blocked off anyhow, so people don't park in them, right?
Yes, so I mean, so they're going to be on that side of the cone. So again, you're probably getting above my pay grade a little bit. I'm not attending all of these meetings, but I would say, yes, that's what we're planning.
Terrific.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion on the table?
Yes.
There is.
Motion and second.
Fantastic. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor of this temporary traffic order, please indicate by raising your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Thank you. If possible, if there's no objection, I'd like to move 22B, which is a request to approve declaration of portion of Rotary Park as surplus up ahead of the parking garage. Would that be acceptable?
That's
sir?
fine. Acceptable.
Okay, all right. So as you know, this has been open to a public hearing. We had a discussion at our last city council meeting, but it's the request to approve the declaration of a portion of Rotary Park in the proximity to the patio outside the powerhouse of the Belknap Mill as surplus. If a declaration of surplus is made, the city council has several options available to them, including licensing or leasing the requested land as opposed to a direct sale. That was raised by Councilor Lippman, which to me sounded like a pretty good idea. How would you like to lead through this right now? Councilor Lippman, would you like to speak?
One other clarification, I think, is our rules say that we can accept or reject all offers, correct?
Correct. Just by declaring a surplus does not mean you have to sell. And just following up on a speaker earlier this evening, you do not necessarily have to take the highest dollar amount offer. In some cases, when you're disposing of city property, it might be the best fit you feel for what a use might be or what a buyer might do with it. In this particular case, since we're talking about such an irregular shape around an existing area, it's not likely there would be competing bids, but you control the entire negotiating process, typically by directing me to negotiate it and then bringing you back a final document to make sure it meets the needs of what you were looking for.
Question.
Please go right ahead.
So Scott, if it's declared surplus, then we have the ability to say whether it would be a sale or a lease.
Yes.
Or
After it's
license,
declared.
licensed.
surplus. Huh?
or
Or
license.
like, yeah.
So you first, if you say no, we don't want to declare it surplus, then we wouldn't be entertaining any offers. That would stop it at that point. If you want to declare it surplus and contingent upon a second motion at least being heard, whether it passes or fails, you can then say you're going to direct me to negotiate with a potential, user for the, determined amount of space after we survey it or identify it, and bring back a lease agreement or a license agreement, something that doesn't tie into an outright sale of property at that point. And then we'll put the terms together on a sheet and bring it to you, and working with legal, sometimes on a lease or a license, you got to renew it every X number of years. So, 10 or 20 years from now, when there's different folks sitting here, they're going to go, what was that council thinking entering into a lease or whatever, doing it? But that certainly is an option as opposed to the sale. And you would take a first vote to declare it surplus, and you could either, put contingencies there or come back with a second follow-up motion to direct me to bring you back something that does not include an outright sale.
Okay, so this is perfunctory in some respects. It allows you to take the next step and then bring back the proposal to us. So go right ahead.
Make the motion to declare surplus.
Second, Counselor Susie. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask those in favor, all those in favor to raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Right ahead, Counselor Lippman.
So I'd like to make a second motion that ask the manager to come up with an option that is not a sale. And I think most likely be some sort of licensing or lease with an adequate term to make something worthwhile on both parties.
No, I think it's a good motion. Certainly appreciate you raising it at the last meeting. I certainly think that allows for things to develop in the future, that instead of actually transferring the property to another entity, we can at least have some control over it if that entity stumbles at something. So I think that's a wise thing to do. So is there a second for Counselor Lippman's motion? So made by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion on the motion on the table?
I assume that the licensing or lease or whatever would have the conditions of what they were going to do worked out as part of that as well.
We would encompass that, and probably some development details for the intent of expanding a patio or deck space for enhancing, public and private activities in Rotary Park, within, the footprint as identified type of thing.
Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion on the table, please indicate by raising your hand. That's 6 votes in support. That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Lippman, for your leadership on that. Moving right along to item number 22A, which is the request to discuss our favorite topic, one of our favorite topics, which is the city parking garage. Wes, if you would be so kind as to join us up here, maybe go over the packet that's been presented, and
Basically, simplest way of putting it, the structure is
make sure to identify yourself for those viewing at home.
Wes Anderson, Director of Public Works for the City of Laconia.
Thank
And
you.
the simplest way of putting it together is the reason why we're still able to use the second deck of the parking garage is the amount of wood reinforcement we're doing to the existing structural steel. Every year we do an annual safety inspection of it to determine, what we have to do to get it through to the next safety inspection. And for the most part, we're probably somewhere averaging about $20,000 to $30,000 a year that we're spending on temporary repairs to the parking garage. At some point in the future, we will no longer be able to do temporary repairs. We don't know when that's going to happen. It'll be more of a case right now of there's something in the structure that says we can't do it, and we'll come back to tell you. The real issue should be is we don't want to get to that point, because once we get to that point, it may become uneconomically feasible to either repair it, or the cost may go up to destroy it, to deconstruct it, excuse me. So we're at the point now where we need to make a decision to keep the costs within a reasonable amount for the city, or whether you want to deconstruct it or rehabilitate it. And if you look at the packet, there was a couple of couple of estimates that we had in for 2019. We did not even try to re-estimate what those costs were based off the fluctuation we're seeing right now with COVID-19. But the cost of the rehab in 2019 was around $4.5 million. Cost of deconstruction was around $2 million.
And that's really where we're sitting. We are scheduled for our annual safety inspection again in September. Typically that happens then sometime in October, November timeframe. We're starting to work with a contractor to do whatever reinforcements that we need to do.
So the current state of affairs is that the third floor, which top deck, it cannot be used to park cars.
You can't get up there at all.
Right. And that's been blocked off since when?
Basically 15, I believe.
Okay. So how would you characterize the condition of the parking garage? Is it structurally unsound?
It's structurally sound to the point where we can crib it and make it safe to use. If we didn't crib it, you wouldn't be able to use it. That's the simplest way of putting it. So if we come up to our inspection in September, they say we have to do a lot more cribbing to it, or we can't crib it anymore, it's then structurally unsound.
Thank you. Counselor Hamel.
Thank you. Stay right there, Wes.
Okay.
So the reason why I didn't call this as a committee meeting, I wanted the full council to be here so that you hear it from the person that's been involved with it for a long time, instead of having a committee meeting, then the committee coming back to the city council and trying to refer all this stuff back. It's easier just to have everybody hear the same thing. So Wes and I met last Monday, I think it was, or whatever, and Wes was gracious enough to come up with this packet. And I asked him to make enough for everybody to look at. There's a variety of costs of what's been going on for a long time, and some pretty specific pictures of the condition of the parking garage. I believe, did you take this one out of like the 2015?
I took some from 2015, some from
15.
2019, and some were pictures that were taken about 4 days ago.
So, this pretty much shows you the condition of the parking garage. We also asked a group out of Concord called the Turner Group to come up and to look at the garage. Wes sent them many documents of what we have already had on file of the condition of the garage and what was done to it. There's a picture of what they think it could look like if we did the whole thing. So as Wes said, there's two choices. The choice is either to deconstruct it for probably a little over 2 million now. And the other choice would be to refurbish it, to bring it all up to grade and with everything as new as possible, I guess you could say, with a elevator and stairway on the outside instead of inside the building. New lighting, electrical, security cameras and all that kind of stuff, and to change the physical look of it on the outside. So that's back then that was 5 million. And so now it's going to be higher than that, obviously.
Right.
So we've come to the point where, we put it off. We're trying to make a decision in May, and Scott put in for some, was it COVID funds or whatever for 2 different senators.
We put in for some of the discretionary earmark type of spending, both through Congressman Pappas's office and then Senator Shaheen's office, as there were various silos for projects to be submitted, and we were not successful in our request on either one of those. So no.
So since we didn't get those in the last one through Senator Shaheen we didn't get that, and that was like a few weeks ago, I believe, that we found that out. So that's why we didn't decide at the end of May. I kind of stalled it to see if, we were going to be able to get, funding for it. So, we can't kick the can down the road anymore. And we got to give Wes and Public Works a decision to see which way we're going to go. If we decide to fix it, then, it's going to involve hiring a CM, architect, engineer. So, we could be looking still 2 years out here before things happen on the building. So I think it's important that we make that, make the decision. I know what I kind of made up my mind that with all things said, that I'm in the boat to get it fix the whole thing. I think tearing it down, we're going to spend, almost half of what it's going to cost to redo it. And we're going to be losing, how many spaces? 400?
256.
50.
250.
250 spaces, which, I really think we're going to need in the future. Things are getting energized downtown, there's businesses coming in. So, in my mind, I think we should fix it. We're still in the same boat that we don't own the retail space. And it really bothers me that that we're kind of kicking that can down the road too. So that in 20, 30 years, as we're sitting here right now, that council back then is going to have the same decision unless we can work on something in that time frame of what's the solution here, because the city needs to get out of that business one way or the other somehow. And I think a big part of this also is going to be, we have to look at paid parking somehow downtown. This has to be part of it, because it's going to be, a substantial amount to fix this, and we need a return to help draw down the bond. So I think that's going to be part of the discussion at some point. So yes, Henry, go ahead.
I agree with your position on it. I think and for 20 to 30 year life, that's what a parking garage is going to need, another renovation anyways at that point.
Yep.
And
I won't be here to discuss it, so
maybe
I'll be off the hook.
But I think as big a chunk as it is to take on, I think that, if we're going to replace that parking, it would cost us a lot more if we, as a brand new structure, as opposed to a renovated structure.
Yeah, I think it might have been based on the $5 million figure, but I think with the reconstruction, the parking spaces were going to be like 11,000 a piece, where a new one would be 25 to 30.
I think those figures are a little bit dated. I think that's probably back when it was
Yeah.
a $3 million
That's what I'm
project.
saying,
So,
it was-
so I think rehabbing these spaces would probably run around 24,000, 25,000, depending where it is. But new construction right now, just with the cost of everything going up as well, is probably north of 35,000. So it's still 10,000 a space less expensive to rehab this. The other thing I'll throw out is, as you know, I think it's going to be I'm hoping it's going to be on our agenda next meeting. We've got the 18 spaces for Rusty McClear that were part of the agreement with the Colonial that will be coming to you for identifying those spaces for the condos. I've had at least one other party say to me, I hear the city might be looking to do some long-term leasing for spaces. I may like some spaces. So not that that's a huge amount of revenue, but we're going to be giving up 18 spaces in between two parking lots downtown, probably in 2 weeks. And then if someone else is interested in having guaranteed reserve parking for their employees, we'll at least consider it and take a look to see what we want to do. So to add these spaces and make them all usable into our inventory downtown, I think, as was already said, I think we're going to need this parking going forward. Maybe not tomorrow, but in the next couple of years.
Bob?
If we go through the renovation, which I agree with, I think you get the right idea. The businesses, will they be closed or shut during that?
I think that's all going to be part of the engineering and architects of finding a way that they can do this so that these businesses can stay open. I mean, that's their livelihood.
Right. That's
and we got to honor that, trying to make it happen. So
Yeah. The city's in a messy situation and has been for quite some time.
Yeah.
The structure in and of itself is an eyesore, and it's not exactly the big welcome sign coming into downtown Laconia. Even looking at how this is refurbished, it's not exactly.
Well, it's a whole lot better than what it looks like now.
I don't
It
think that's the
is,
final
but-
design. That can't be the final.
No,
design.
but
It's just
anyway,
a thought they have.
Thought, right.
and I think it makes a difference, as Bob, you and I have talked over the past few months and walking through downtown, that first impressions make a difference, and how you brand and market your city. And so let's face it, it's a bit of an eyesore and always has been, and wishing it to go away doesn't work. And we do need the spaces. I have no doubt in the years to come that we're going to need them right now, based on the pace of what's going on, the economic activity downtown. I don't think any one of us sits up here and relishes the idea of having to commit millions of dollars either to tear it down or to build a new one. But it may be just a difficult a difficult decision we have to come to over in a fairly short
No,
order, and
and-
I'd like to get all the data sooner.
We've also gotten a tremendous ROI on it. I mean, it's well past its
Sure.
time.
I had the rest of my question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, was to city manager, are we done with the avenues of trying to get additional funding somewhere? I mean, I realize we're probably not, how we lost, or we didn't get on this. I mean, what else do we do?
I'm not available of any additional funding opportunities at the federal level or nor the state level. And the ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act money that came through on the infrastructure uses, allowed uses with those dollars that came, were announced in the February, March timeframe, and the city just got it in the last week or two. The only infrastructure uses there were for water, sewer, stormwater, or broadband. So we could not target even those dollars towards a parking structure.
That's a good question. I go right ahead. Yeah.
So there was a report that came out in 2019 by Du Bois and King.
Mhm.
I think the rest of the council should be able to read it. I've got it, but it's in pretty small print, so I don't know if we could find it. It's probably in the record somewhere. But upgrading that garage and doing everything we want to do pretty much gives it a 25 to 30 year service agreement. You build a brand new one, and this is back in 2019, it was 10,800,000 to build a new one, and you get the same 25 to 30 year service agreement. So that's a no brainer to
Yeah,
rebuild this.
the Turner group that came up, and I walked with them and Wes in that parking garage, and he looked it all over. And I think part of it has got to be too, that the lanes that go up into the garage, the ramps.
Those are
Thank you.
horrible.
Those need to be addressed significantly. And he mentioned about property by the soda shop, if that was city property or not, but I mean, that's all would be part of the design, but they need to be addressed so that, you know, you can get something up there. But the gentleman from the Turner Group, after looking at, you know, everything that Wes sent him, said it can be done. So.
Well, I think, go right ahead, Councilor Haynes.
No, thank you. My question, I have a comment and question. I think we need to make sure that the public is well educated upon the facts and the costs. I think Bob's comment is pertinent, that to tear it down, but deconstruct $2 million, we're halfway to fixing it anyways. Okay. Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and even if we tear it down and the first floor becomes the roof of the building, who is going to be responsible for that? Okay, so. I mean,
I'm sorry.
Go right
Mr. Mayor,
ahead.
hey. My question was, so we deconstruct it. What then? And then a follow-up, do we have to buy the property owners on the first floor out?
The lease agreement, or the agreement that we have between the two parties, basically we're responsible for maintaining the roof of the buildings underneath the parking garage. So the 2 million deconstruction is deconstruction plus converting the what was the second deck into a roof for it. That's why the price went up. In that particular case, we would just have to renegotiate the lease or whatever the agreement was to be able to turn it over to them. And in the deconstruction mode, say, this is your roof, you're now responsible for it.
So just play devil's advocate. So what if we just said, take it down to the ground?
You would have to buy the property underneath it, because we don't own the land. We don't own the buildings underneath it.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. What would you suggest the next step is here for us to a revised estimate for both? I think we should have, you know, nothing is good or bad until you compare it to something else. So, I mean, the idea of just getting a reconstruction cost is going to be a pretty significant sum, but I think we ought to be able to compare and contrast it to a deconstruction cost as well.
We can. I think we got hard numbers back in 2012 or 13. First time.
I'd have to go back and look.
And then we updated, we paid to have them updated again in 19. And now if we were gonna have to pay and update it again, I'd rather say, let's put an inflator to that and get us in the ballpark rather than just say, let's go out and, because to go out and get brand new cost again, that's just gonna delay us several months to firm up a number that we know. I think even if we got up as high as 6 million on a cost per space, you're still well under the new construction. You're getting the useful life. As I was saying to someone the other day, not that it solves all the problems, but if you think of some of the benefit of the colonial and what I think we'll see more benefit of the colonial of adding productive tax-paying property or increased tax-paying property in the downtown. So if you think in the last year, we now have the Buzzio Mansion on the tax roll. We're soon to have the Holy Trinity School on the tax roll. We've got Rusty McClear and his wife putting in 9 condos and, pick an assessment number for 9 condos. There are $1.5 million to $2 million coming on the tax roll, where I think collectively that entire theater, when it was privately owned, was probably assessed at $900,000 because of the disrepair and it being closed. The 4 storefronts on the in the Colonial project are coming on the tax roll. So if you start to just add that increment, do we have $3, $4, $5 million in new assessment coming online, partly because of the Colonial driving it, and partly because some of it was nonprofit before or church related and non-taxable before, I should say. So, some of that's throwing off some money that, some of it flows into the downtown TIF, some of it flows into the general fund. But we think we'll see more of that. And I think that was one of the major reasons that the city invested in the Colonial, was to drive economic activity elsewhere. And I think some of that activity can come and support debt service on this. It's not going to cover it all by any stretch of the imagination, but I just think in a short window, you can identify that value coming on that didn't exist prior to this.
I agree.
So I think it's critically important as we move forward on this. It is a significant sum that we're going to consider spending on something that needs to be done. And I think the public needs to have ample opportunity for input. And I think we also have to go above and beyond in trying to make sure that all of this information the public has easy access to, and it is transparent, right? I mean, this could be this is one of the biggest expenditures that we have in the course of the next few years here. So I think that's got to be a priority. Good data, and make sure it's completely accessible for people and ample opportunity for them to weigh in on it. Councilor Hamel.
I agree with you 100%. But I guess my question to Scott would be, if the consensus is to go ahead and fix it, what's the next step? What would be the next step?
So I think the mayor is absolutely correct. So I think if there's consensus tonight that that's the direction you want to go, we'll put together a concise package. This is great in the package we all got with the photos is great, but I think just, here was the cost here was the cost in this year. We're inflating it out here. This is the number of parking spaces we're yielding. This is the cost per space. We're getting a 25-year useful life out of it. We can compare it to construction cost of, I know Portsmouth has just in the last 2 years completed a new, I don't know if it's their second or third parking garage in Portsmouth, but a new garage there. Dover's is probably about 4 or 5 years old now. We can certainly get the numbers there. Concord has a relatively new garage, so we can put together some comparisons, and so that people can say, the cost per space rehab is X, the cost for new is going to be Y. And we don't just have to limit it to New Hampshire cities. We obviously want to find somebody who's in our region, but it wouldn't preclude us from looking at Mass or Maine or Vermont somewhere. But we'll get some relevant data, put something out that lays out a real good roadmap for everyone to see what the options are and have an opportunity to chime in. And if you want to have that on your agenda in 2 weeks and then refer it to a public hearing that's advertised, and then potentially look to take, formal action on us, that would put us at the end of September.
Yeah, I'd like to kick it out even farther than that, because I think we need to open it up for those that can't attend a public hearing or just miss the notice. I really think we have to figure out a way to go above and beyond on this as well. And go right ahead, Councilor Lippman.
So I think transparency is important, but I think at the end, people who are taxpayers in the community want to understand what the impact is on their tax rate and what it means for what they're going to have for parking. I think, the design and construction may be an interest to a smaller group, but I think at the end of the day, there's a crowd out spending on other areas that are important to us. I think those are the 3 main things. What does it mean to my tax bill? What does it mean for me to park? And what other things might we have to give up in order to afford that? And I think if we can answer those three things, we'll have, that's, I think, the kind of transparency is probably more important to the greater.
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely, yes.
I think part of that also is I think it has to be very well known of the situation we're in with that too. I mean, it's just not our building, it's another building and we have responsibilities to maintain that building, as Wes said. So I would like to ask the mayor to see, not necessarily call a roll, but get an opinion on the councilors of what they want to do.
Councilor Cheney, go right ahead before I get to that point.
I just, I support this, but I'm not as anxious to drag this out.
Either.
And the reason I say that is recognizing I'm an expert in finances, I suspect our interest rates are going to climb here pretty quick. And the quicker we can find the money to do this, the better off we're going to be. We can save our taxpayers a ton of money.
Yep.
In just a couple of percentage points difference between now and
6 months.
you know, the end of the
Say
year
down
or
the end of the
whatever.
year, yeah, we're gonna.
So, and I appreciate everything you said, Mayor, and I agree, and I agree with Councilor Lippman. But I'd like to do it as rapidly as we can. I think we can do all the things you've suggested if we just make a bigger splash about it than we might normally do. I think we can ask the paper to do some significant stories as the information becomes available. I think we should ask the radio stations to talk about it for us, whatever, but let's move along, because I just think this is one of those projects that should be done sooner rather than later.
Should have been done
I
years
would-
ago.
I would like to see this probably, like what the city manager said, is the first meeting in September that we could schedule a public hearing and to get the ball rolling on that.
I
Because
think
there's gonna be a long process for this, you know, and I don't know, you know, once we find out a figure, if we can go out to a bond quicker. Or is that, I don't know how that works, if we could do a bond before to get a good interest rate, or you can't do that.
We'll look at options.
Yeah, look at that, okay. Check with legal, right? Okay.
Go right ahead, Councilor Susie.
The question I have is related to, I mean, there's got to be a selection process that we're gonna have to go through between the architect, you know, and who's gonna do the building and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of preparation work there ahead of time. And we're gonna have to fund that, no doubt, okay, as part of either the bond or some other ways. And that's what I'd like to see come up, I mean, shortly after the public hearing, just to stay along with what Councilor Cheney was saying. And the past city councils have, as Bob would say, kicked it down the road many times. And we've got to face reality here. And at the same time, I'd like to see some input from the downtown businesses on one of the questions that came up of whether or not, I know it's a tough subject. It's going to be, you're going to have to pay for the parking at some point. Either, you know, meters or something, the garage or something else like that. And, you know, what are their thoughts about that too? I know they don't want none because of the customer base, but at the same time, there's reality. That's all I'm asking.
So I guess do we have consensus right now in the council that we should start to put a pencil to paper based on the estimates we've received in 2019, figuring in the inflation and the market conditions, getting some sense of what it might cost us, and move this to a public hearing? What was the schedule you gave us there?
I think if
Scott?
we put together that packet and we build those numbers for you, and then we have it on the agenda for the 23rd, you can then refer it to a public hearing. While we've already advertised the numbers for that agenda, you would again move that entire thing to a public hearing for the second Monday in September, which would be September 13th. And then depending on where you're at that night, you could take action. You could say we want to recess the public hearing and go one more time and give people another shot to
Okay. chime
chime in on the 27th. You could control anything you wanted at that point.
Good with you, Counselor Cheney there? If-
Yes.
If people speak up and say, geez, I didn't get a chance and maybe, okay, but
I
you
mean,
want
if
to
the
keep
room
moving
gets
it.
flooded with a bunch of people saying no, then we all need to step back a
Yep,
bit and think
That's
about
right.
it. But
Okay. I think it's good input. So do we have consensus on a schedule like that and the information that we're going to receive from Scott?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So also let you know, the 23rd, I won't be here.
nice try.
We're gonna make you the chair of the committee. All right, so I think that Wes, thanks very much for your assistance with this. Then we'll move that right along then.
Thank you,
That
Wes, for.
Takes us to the
everything.
end of our agenda. I would like to adjourn
Where's Amy?
the city council meeting of August 9th, 2021 at 9 PM. Thank you.
So moved.